Okay, so we're going to talk about automated tools. So we've done the static code scanning, right? And we've looked at the manual stuff just to kind of keep our brains fresh on here's the kind of things I should be looking out for when I'm coding. But now we want to switch over to looking at how do I test this stuff in real world situations to make sure where I'm hosting doesn't have a lot of vulnerabilities. And I'm not talking about the server. I'm talking about when I've got my web app hosted, is it running properly? Can people get to it? Stuff like that. Or can people hack it? So there's lots of these. I mean, I wouldn't doubt that there were probably 500 companies that do this kind of stuff. Not necessarily Rails, but security testing, because it's a big deal. But here are some of the ones that I've run across and that you've run across that are good. So one is guardrails. This one is specifically to be run against Rails apps. And most of these will have a free tier. But what they do is they kind of try to attack different vectors of your real site or your staging site. You can set it up against staging, most of them. But they see how things react in the wild, as it were. And they try to find ways to get inside your stuff. And they check for a lot of the same things that Brakeman will check for, but they check for them from the front end instead of from the code end. Because there are things that Brakeman can't see. So it's good to run these kinds of things here. So guardrails is a nice one for Rails. Detectify is good. I believe it has a free tier as well. Oh, it doesn't. This one doesn't. And the other thing to be aware of is these security scanners, most of them are expensive. This isn't cheap stuff, but it's much less expensive than having your website get hacked and getting sued by 100,000 people because you leaked all their credit card information. So $85 a month is not expensive compared to that.
Have you used guardrails or Detectify?
I've played with guardrails. Seems to be really nice. I've run it a couple of times against a live site. I've run Detectify. Ran that a while back, but haven't run it for a while.
How are these two different, or are they checking pretty much the same stuff?
They're generally the same. A lot of it has to do with the GUI and their design choices more than...
Right, but basically it's still testing the same...
Yeah.
Stuff. Okay.
It's testing the same kind of things. I mean, one of them may test this particular type of SQL injection and the other one doesn't. That's a different type, as well as the 30 other types that they have in common. But so there are going to be some minor differences, but generally they're testing the same stuff. And these two are really close. Their main difference really is in their interface.
Yeah, I've used a different one, but yeah. Okay.
So here's one that I kind of like because it's more of a local thing. It's called Tarantula. So I love the name because it's just funny. I just imagine this hairy spider running through my code.
It's like Netflix's Chaos Monkey.
Right. So it'll go in and kind of mess around with data and see if it can break things and do a bunch of mutations and all that kind of stuff. Now it's a little out of date, but that's not really that big a deal because it's not trying to test up-to-date CVEs and stuff. It's testing for, well-known and long-established security issues. And what you do with this is you set it up as a rake test, and it'll go through and just run through your code against your local server or your CI/CD server or wherever you put it. But it's just a rake task. But it comes back and gives you, oh God, you've got a problem here. You might want to check it out. So, yeah, I would check that out because, again, it's free. It's just a gem, and set up a rake task and play with it. I mean, if you don't like it, don't use it, but I liked it. Now, one of the nice things that's happening more and more recently is that, along with many other things, security checking is becoming open source. And I've run across this thing, Chariot from Praetorian, that is an open source security vulnerability scanner. So it kind of does the same thing as Guardrails and Detectify, same kind of stuff, but it's all open source, which means it's all free.
Basically, you download it and you run it against your stuff. It's not a service doing it.
Right.
Okay.
It's not quite the same as Guardrails, but it's the same kind of thing. It's just you have to do it.
Yeah.
We've got some garbage chat. All right. Anyway, moving on. Let me get rid of this dipstick.
For those who are wondering what was going on, we thought someone may have been talking with us, but someone was just spamming us.
Oh, it's not spam.
Oh, or not.
My apologies, Goro. Oh, well, okay. No, it was spam.
Okay.
Anyway. So let's see. Anyway, this is free, so it's basically kind of you host it.
Yep.
But it does all the same kind of things. But what's nice is that I'm starting to see a lot more open source stuff to help people with security scanning on the front end. I mean, like Brakeman's been around for a long time. The back end kind of security stuff, free security stuff, open source stuff has been around for a while. But up until recently, there hasn't been a lot in the way of front end stuff. So, anywho.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of penetration software is open source. So this is just kind of the next evolution of it. And it is a form of penetration.
Right, it is. And that's something that we'll talk about in a little bit, is the penetration testing and why that's important.
Well, it's essentially what this is, but it's automated. It's doing it in an automated fashion. That's what these tools do. They attempt to break into your site or break it in some way using automated tools that are just hitting it.
Exactly. And now the other part of this is these are all automated tools. There are a lot of services that you can hire that are kind of like white hat hackers. They will manually come in and try to hack your site.
They'll put a human brain behind
it. So if you're going for high security, like banks will use those people, they'll use stuff like this, but they'll get the white hats on it too, because it's very important. These automated tools can only think so much. They only know what's been put into them. A live person can really break your stuff, and they will go after things really hard. So if you're trying to get bank level security on your site, or you're trying to get PCI compliance or something like that, you really should be hiring a real person. I mean, using all this other stuff is great, but at the very end of that chain, you need to have white hats on, just banging on your site to make sure it's secure. So, have you ever used one of those live services?
What do you mean, like guardrails?
No. Like real white hat people.
Oh, no.
They are very expensive.
Which is why I haven't used those.
Right. That's not something that most small shops or medium-sized shops would do. But if you deal with PCI compliance, it's something you probably want to really think about. Because PCI
and this
compliance.
This is if you are storing, transmitting, processing credit cards.
Right. Yeah, if you're dealing with something like a processor.
There are ways to do integrations where the numbers never hit your server.
Right. As long as you're never storing the numbers and the card information. You can do like what I forget what they call it. It's like a mini PCI compliance.
Yeah, it's like a security assessment questionnaire D or something. It's much less and doesn't require penetration testing.
It's like 3 pages where the PCI is like 400 pages or some ridiculous thing like that. But yeah, and full PCI compliance requires pen testing and audits, security audits, and all kinds of stuff. So if you're into full PCI compliance, which, not a lot of people are, it's going to be banks and payment processors and credit card companies and things like that. And big, like Amazon is PCI compliant because they actually store the stuff. But a lot of companies will just use payment processors and integrate with them and not have to worry about that. But you still should be running stuff like this to make sure, especially the free stuff. I mean, there's really no excuse not to do it. Because this kind of thing protects you from a lot of legal exposure from your customers. Because if somebody hacks into your site and steals their information, that's on you. And if you can't say, well, I was using this and this and this, and then I've done everything, the due diligence to protect the user's data. If you can't say that, you're probably going to lose any lawsuits that come your way from that stuff. So, take a look at all that stuff. Even if you're not storing sensitive information, it's just a good idea from a PR standpoint to say, hey, you want to join my site? I do all this stuff to make sure you're protected.
If you like this clip and want to watch another one, you can click right here. Or if you want to watch the full video, you can click here.